10 a.m. Firstly, I'd like to say welcome to everybody that's joined us. Welcome to our BICSI South Pacific annual AGM. Thank you to our members that have joined us. Also, I'd like to welcome our guests from BICSI Global. We've got Todd Taylor, he's with us, he's our president. Carol Everett Oliver, our president-elect. We also have John Daniels, our BICSI Global CEO. And if I'm not mistaken, we have Betty Eckebrecht, who is our BICSI secretary, I believe.
CFO.
Okay, thank you for joining us. And also Michelle, who is our recently appointed Chief Growth Officer for BICSI Global. I'd like to also welcome our other guests from other parts of the world. Thank you for joining us. And we know it's morning for some, afternoon for some, and also evening for some. So I do appreciate you joining us all. I'd also like to make acknowledgement to our South Pacific Board of Directors. And thank you for joining us, and particularly thanking you for all your hard work and input that you have given to the board over my time as chair, particularly in the hard times that we had endured. The next slide, Paul. So throughout, if I just reflect without harping too much on the COVID situation, we all know what it is, and we just got to live with it and get on with it the best we can. But we know BICSI South Pacific, for our membership value, we continued to fight. And I've said this numerous times to Paul and the board, and I probably mentioned it last year in the AGM, that Paul's idea of creating the webinars early in the piece, because he foresaw that we would have some potential issues with the ride if COVID did get to the point that it did get to. So that was one thing that we tried to do under Paul's instigation of that one, and I felt it was very successful. We had the opportunity throughout a little bit of last year and this year, when the borders did open, to conduct a couple of face-to-face events. We had the Perth Golf Day. We had quiz nights in Brisbane, and we also had some live seminars across New Zealand. So where we could, we did. But as we know, the lockdown came in fairly fierce. So we tried there to offer as much membership value to our members as possible throughout that time. Currently, we're in a very positive financial position. I won't touch on that too much. I'll take away from Aaron's report. And we also have a lot of plans and strategies to enhance membership value moving forward. There's a lot of things that have been discussed and planned in the background in our strategic meetings with the board. And that particular point will be a highlight of Renil's report as incoming chair. So I won't touch on that too much. Next slide, please, Paul. So I'd like to just, as outgoing chair, I'd like a personal thank you to all our members for your support, the board for your support, and all our international colleagues for your support. So this time now marks the change of the chair role to handing over to Renil at the end of this, effective at the end of this meeting. I must say, I never thought in the whole time as chair, and which is something I wanted to do for a long time, that is like a personal comment, that I would not see one member face to face. I had one meeting with Paul, Julia, Renil and Aaron earlier in last year, and that was pretty much it. So a lot of ideas and plans went out the window there, but if that's all I've got to complain about, I'm very lucky. So we've all had a lot of challenges, but it's a very, very interesting time of being chair, I must say. Very interesting time for all of us. So I truly believe what we've achieved is a good reflection, a great reflection as a membership, both South Pacific and globally, that we can do in when faced with many challenges. So I'm very proud to be a South Pacific member, and I'm very proud of all our contributors. So looking forward to seeing the continued growth of BICSI over the coming years. I'll always be excited to see that. So just on, I'll just hand over to Renil now. So I'll come in at the end just to close off the meeting, and that'll be my last official duty as chair. Any questions that you've got along the way, we're going to have a question time at the end of this meeting. So if you want to just note down any questions you may have. We have had some questions posed to us already that we've actually got up, we'll bring up onto the screen that we want to address. So please feel free to note down any questions that you may have, and we'll address them at the end of the meeting. So I'll pass over to Renil now, and thank you all very much for your attendance and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. And again, yeah, thank you very much, I guess, for the past 2 years, your, I guess, dedication while we've had probably some of the most challenging times within BICSI South Pacific, helping guide through that. And I think really reinforcing the team together with Paul and team and then all of the other board of directors, just to make sure that we're all having our eyes on the focused, with our eyes in the right direction. It wasn't an easy time, as I think we've met and spoken about a lot of times. So if we can move to the, I guess, the next slide page, and we'll go through. I guess it's 2021 for those. I guess a lot of people are here. Has been pretty much a tough year. 2020 was very tough, and 2021, I think we all were thinking about, and I think Carol said it before, it could be 2023 when we get to some normality, but 2021 we thought was going to be normal. It was a one-year blip. Unfortunately, what we have to look at is, I think, living with COVID or any pandemic situation, and this hybrid world will become a normality. So I think what 2021 has allowed us to do, and a lot of work internally, is to realign our focus on what we deliver as services. Can training be delivered online, and then the networking component is what we actually focus on when we meet? Do we make sure the vendors and the other participants that are in this get that front and center in the face-to-face time, and then the training is all through seminars or a mix? And it's really allowed us to look at lots of different options so that we provide good value for that. The other little focus group, I think probably in the last 18 months, we've had an amazing amount of support from BICSI HQ. And I apologise for the late timings and the sessions that we have, but there's always been a very strong attendance and support from that team. So from my side, it's been great. And what I'd like to see is that continue. Carol, I know you're coming in as well. So just that same, I guess, contribution that you guys provide, we see that as a really good alignment so that we can not, it's an ongoing discussion and dialogue, and we're not coming to you or having discussions and dialogues when something's either being requested or something's going wrong. So I think that positive collaboration and also alignment, I think it's great to have the alignment, even though we're an affiliate, the alignment of whatever BICSI Global is doing, we're very closely aligned and we're aware of that. And again, I think, Trevor, you've it's been very good to have your leadership and support. And I think it's been a tough 2 years. I think we've learned a lot on the mechanics and how we do things and what we can do in the 2 years. Generally would be very event focused. The one positive, I guess, out of COVID has been to really realign our internal mechanisms so that we can really focus on our members. Just a big thank you to all the other members, board members that are outgoing in this board, and obviously some new board members that are going to be coming in as of the end of this meeting. Looking forward to their energy and experience to contribute towards what we can do. Move on to the next slide if you can for me, Paul. Not sure. Thank you. So just the re-energisation piece that I touched on earlier, I think it's key for us to make sure that we look at how we operate in 2022 coming up and moving forward. What is key? What are our engagement metrics? How do we want to measure ourselves? Engaging with our members better. I think one of the key things we want to do is also not only have the alignment between BICSI South Pacific and BICSI HQ, but also BICSI Australia and New Zealand. Two very different markets, obviously very closely aligned, but we want to make sure that there's greater alignment between the two, and we're having crossover events as much as possible. So it's not a New Zealand event and an Australian event, the ability to cross over and join that. And I think our communication, the frequency, the format, and the content to our members is going to be crucial. So really making sure our members feel the value and they appreciate email communication, and not that just they turn up to an event every 3 months and that's the communication we have with them. So really communicating and connecting is the theme moving forward. And just on to the next slide there, Paul, thank you. And I guess the main thing there, the key areas of focus that I have on my plate for 2022, and obviously we'll refocus with the rest of the board and look at what we do later. But for myself, it's really trying to get our approach. And as Trevor said earlier, there's been a lot of work that Paul did on webinars. There's some very successful webinars with, I think our most successful was over 300 attendees, and we were averaging between 30 and 60 depending on the topic. So if we can do that, have both Australia and New Zealand extended out to Japan as well, because the time zones correspond, really focusing on member education and training. And this is also leveraging off some of the training that's available now, John, from BICSI HQ, but also looking at really working with your team to make some of that training available at, I guess, the interactive ones available in our time zone, or looking at the Southeast Asia group to see what's available in our time zone so members can contribute. I think some of those more collaborative workshop-based sessions will be really good, because it really engages the members from globally. We really do work on similar standards and similar knowledge, so it'd be great to get that. I think the other key one there is to really, in the Australia and New Zealand market, get members actively participating so that we are seen as the main peak body. We're doing pieces already, and I know, Murray, thank you. We're getting involved in one of the sessions through aged care. We had the licensing responses, and I think moving forward, as one of the past chairs said, I think we need to be actively participating so the industry outside our industry sees us as the people to go to. If we can refocus and align that, members will see the increased value, because if everybody outside our industry sees us as valuable, then people who are within our group will see us as valuable as well. So on that note, I'll pass on to Aaron, who's going to run through all of the fun numbers.
Thanks, Renil. Much appreciated. Could you move on to the first slide, Paul, please? Thank you. So I guess my main things I want to touch on is just on general things. So membership revenue is slightly down, but I think that's sort of part and parcel with things, and I don't believe in terms of numbers that's actually translating to a large loss of members. However, you know, generally our ongoing revenue has been lower over this course of financial year, because this financial year has taken the full brunt of the pandemic scenario, whereas the 2020 financial year took only a couple of months. My expectation is that the 2022 financial year will also incur some lower than usual revenues and liabilities as we move forward to more of a business as usual approach in 2023. This is largely to do with the fact that we've had no conference, we've had very limited face-to-face time, and those things like golf days where we can raise money. But on the flip side, our operating expenses are largely down, with our, you know, very little outgoing expenses, you know, on things like the conferences and those other things that we've had to pay for. But, you know, overall, it's a slight profit after adjustments. So that's, you know, a sound fundamental business structure in my opinion. Paul, can you go on to the next slide, please? Looking at this balance sheet, so our assets are largely same as previous. There's a very, very limited movement in anything. We do have some small liabilities on the New Zealand conference, and provisions for the Australian conference and those other areas, and some stuff that's been carried through. These may likely be carried through into 2022 until we actually host conferences and more in-person events, and some of these prepayments and stuff like that are, you know, down. But largely, you know, we've increased our equity position, and, you know, the business itself as a whole is quite healthy. I guess my main takeaways for the whole of the financial report is that, you know, the business is meeting all of its financial obligations in spite of our current headwinds. That suggests we are in a strong position, and you know, provided we maintain our membership levels and our value, I foresee that still remaining strong into the future. And that it is, again, imperative to understand that next year's results will largely be down due to the first half being still under predominantly pandemic conditions, without achieving any real normalcy until, you know, mid to late next year, I would argue, from a financial perspective. That's really it from me, Paul. I'd like to hand over, and thanks very much.
I better unmute myself to get more involved. Thank you to Trevor, Renil and Aaron for their reports. What I'll do is I'll just step us through some of the more operational issues. First of all, a quick look at our membership report. This just gives us indication of last year versus this year, or this past year that's just gone through. We're down about 7 or 8% in members. Not surprising. And conversations we've had with members, some who've stayed on, some who've dropped off, was either members are retiring because of age, leaving industry, or their corporates looking to reduce expenditure, particularly in the corporate memberships, etc., which has resulted in a minor setback. Although that said, in conversations with a lot of members, it's the case of, it's an identity. So the importance of being a BICSI member, be it in the corporate sense or an individual, and making sure that that identity is maintained. And we certainly thank those who've stayed with us. As Renil mentioned, the output, the perceived output hasn't been significant because we haven't run events. However, there's been a lot of work, groundwork in the background, a lot of activity, a lot of host area. One area in particular is the social media side of things. I am pleased to say that the followers have increased pretty much across the board. Other than Twitter, which we really haven't focused on a great deal. Our followers for both the company and the group within LinkedIn have both increased. Instagram has increased. And I thank the members who have posted comments and social media statements, etc., on these platforms. It's been a very good thing. And it helps to create that sense of community or engagement when we're in an environment where we physically can't meet up with each other so much. So we want to encourage people to do that more, to continue to promote our use of social media, the ability to communicate to members, communicate to industry, and in particular to articulate the value of ICT infrastructure. I think that's an important thing. So by all means, please, whilst BICSI staff put up material periodically, we'd certainly welcome more and more members to put them up and make it that strong community aspect. A big focus of BICSI South Pacific, as is globally, is standards. And I'm pleased to say that in spite of coronavirus lockdowns, our participation in standards has still been just as strong. In fact, I think we've actually increased rather than decreased our participation. And that's either as BICSI, an association, like our representatives or our staff on various standards committees, and you as individuals, as subject matter experts on these committees. So this is just a summary of the committees that we're involved with. Importantly, you'll see across the bottom of this slide, the BICSI Standards Committee. So BICSI HQ have a number of standards committees, and I'm delighted that many of our members, our subject matter experts, are participating in these committees and contributing to the development of truly international standards, which is very, very important. Now, this is our usual, at every year we have the changeover, and we've got a number of outgoing board members and then a number of incoming board members. So I'll just run through them. And we've got Trevor Kleinert, who's stepping down as chair. And I'd like to thank Trevor for 2 years of dutifully providing the leadership and direction and helping us through very, very challenging times. Aaron Drew is leaving us as treasurer. And as you'll see, he's coming back on board as treasurer. Paul McDowell is leaving us as a general board member. Julia Curtin is leaving us as a general board member. Now, as you're all aware, the board members are on a 2-year period. It's a rotational basis. So you come on, you can renominate to come back on if you like, or you just simply step off. just to ensure that we have the circulatory arrangement, and it gets more members involved, which is an important thing. We get fresher outlooks and different perspectives. So coming in, Ranil Singh is stepping up as chair. Julia Curtin is stepping back onto the board as deputy chair. Aaron Drew is coming back on board as treasurer. And joining us is Mike Stacey from New Zealand. And we welcome Mike. And Lyndon Haig is also rejoining us. Lyndon was a board member several years ago, stepped off, and now has come back on. So we certainly want to welcome our 4 new board members coming on, effective as of today. So welcome to the leadership team, and we look forward to working with you over the next couple of years.
Thank you.
We have the same situation with our volunteers, and that is, to me, the true engine room of our organisation, of our association. The volunteers who put in a tremendous amount of effort that contribute to the significance of our industry, both for us as members and also for our clients and for our community. Stepping down as coordinator is Craig Buckingham in Queensland, Daniel Ellis in WA, and Karen Pasilic as New Zealand Country Chair. Coming in to fill those roles, we have Trent Pedersen, who's taken over as WA Regional Coordinator. Auckland, well, it's North Island, Upper North Island is the official term in New Zealand. Mike Crawford stepping in there. And the New Zealand Country Chair is being taken over by Bruce Turner. We still need coordinators for Victoria and Queensland. So we would welcome input from members in this regard. Once again, we encourage members to get involved, provide that leadership, liaise with us in the office in terms of getting these events organised. And whilst it's been a challenging last 18 months or so, particularly in Victoria with lockdowns, we certainly are opening up again and hope that we might be able to get back to some element of normality in 2022. But just before we move off these slides, I'd like to personally thank our outgoing board and outgoing volunteers. Thank you for your tireless efforts. It's a voluntary situation. It is for the benefit of our association and for the community at large. So it is very much appreciated. And we welcome our incoming board and volunteers and look forward to your participation. Ordinarily, we'd have plaques to present for the outgoing volunteers and board members, but since it's virtual, it's almost impossible to do that. So we'll have something scheduled at another time when we can actually meet in person. Now that concludes the comments from myself. We now like to hand over to John Daniels, the BICSI CEO, as he steps us through some of the vision from a global perspective. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity. Trevor, I thank you for the opportunity as well. And of course, Ranil, congratulations, and I appreciate working with you. It's always good for us to connect like this because, of course, with BICSI South Pacific being an extension of BICSI, the organization globally, it's important that our activities and our efforts are in sync. And that's why I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you about the current BICSI strategic plan and certainly what we're doing from an operational perspective to support that strategic plan. So very briefly, what I wanted to do is just remind everyone of BICSI's 4 top goals that have been established by the board of directors that serve as the guiding light for me and the staff in supporting our efforts, working very, very hard to achieve those 4 goals. And those 4 goals, the first one revolves around industry collaboration and our effort to take BICSI to the point where we are recognized as the primary source of ICT subject matter expertise. And so in order to do that, we've got to work with other organizations, other associations to try to collaborate together to basically build awareness of what BICSI is doing, how we're contributing to the industry and the profession. And certainly there's a lot of activities that we're doing to do that. Our second goal that the board has given us is to become a global leader. And we want to be able to see BICSI as being recognized as the preeminent ICT resource for professionals and for the ICT community. So we have a number of initiatives that are underway to support that particular goal. The third goal is public policy engagement. I know I've worked with Paul and Trevor and others on some of the recent policy changes that are happening within Australia, but there's other policy changes happening around the world. And of course, BICSI, if we want to influence how our standards and our content's being used to advance the profession and advance the ICT profession, we've got to also be able to educate the policymakers around the world about those ICT issues. And so we've got some things brewing in that particular area. There's a lot more we could do, but at this point, we're doing what we can with the resources that we have, and we hope to ramp that up over time. The fourth goal, of course, is another very important one, and that is a focus on generating member value. In other words, looking at our membership programs, listening to our members, and trying to understand what exactly is it within a membership program that they need to support them in their profession, and certainly to support their companies as well. And so we're going to be, we have a lot of activities in this area too, to drive member value and to understand their needs, and then to adjust our membership programs to meet the needs globally. And of course, that includes in BICSI South Pacific. Now, some of the specific initiatives that I'll share with you that that are currently in progress to support these four goals, very briefly. The first one is to look at BICSI's marketing and growth strategy. You all heard earlier that membership numbers are down a little bit, and that's normal, actually, for what's happening with other organizations around the world, and especially in membership organizations. It's been a very tough time. The pandemic has truly had a significant impact on a lot of membership organizations. So we're using this as an opportunity to look at our marketing strategy, how we present the value of BICSI and membership and other of our products and services to the industry and the professionals in the industry, and build a roadmap forward for strengthening that messaging and certainly our growth strategy to again, drive value. As part of that, of course, we're also looking at our membership programs. The board is very serious about placing the value of membership at a very high priority, and that's why they've listed it as one of their top 4 goals. So we've been very focused on trying to look at our membership programs so that we can cater to the needs of the industry as best we can. And so we're going to be looking at our membership programs, both the individual program and the corporate membership program. And you'll probably see some surveys coming out from headquarters to your members as well, asking for their feedback and input on what is it that they would like to see in a membership program, not only from the individual perspective, but from the company perspective too. So we're going to be working on that over the next several months, and then hopefully that will culminate in a roadmap for evolving our membership programs to meet those needs based on the feedback that we get. The other area that we're looking at is expanding our affiliate model. BICSI South Pacific and BICSI Japan are both BICSI affiliates. And in places where we're seeing growth to a certain extent, and particularly credentials around the world, our affiliates have demonstrated their value to the industry and also to BICSI, the organization, in localizing what BICSI does for your local community. And so we want to leverage that model. So we're going to also be spending the next several months looking at our affiliate model and finding a way to expand that and open that up to other regions around the world to give them the opportunity to do the same that Japan and Australia and New Zealand have done for your local communities to bring BICSI locally. So we're going to be working on that for a while. And of course, we haven't had as many regional events this past year. And of course, we can blame that on the pandemic because it's true. That has certainly had a significant impact on our ability to do things face to face. And of course, that impacts our ability to pay for the programs that we do. And so our revenue's down just as y'all's is overall. And so we are looking at innovative, creative ways that we can begin to start bringing back some of the regional events over the next 3 to 4 years. So it's going to take time, and it may be 2023 or 2024 before we get back to some semblance of what we were doing before COVID. But it's going to take time, and we've got to deliberately be deliberate about how we do that and what we do, because our resources are scarce and we want to make sure that we're using them optimally. So those are the things from an operations standpoint that we're focused on. I'm super glad that you all invited us to be a part of this. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Renil, for the opportunity to participate. And I agree with you that the collaboration's been great over the past year. And I certainly look forward to continued collaboration and certainly supporting you all in your effort in making BICSI a local organization for your constituents. So thank you again, and congratulations, Renil, and the new board, and good luck.
Thanks, John. Much appreciated. Thanks for sharing that vision with us too. I think we're going to continue with that. Yes, we're going to continue with the, I guess, the global vision. We've got some comments from BICSI President Todd Taylor.
Thank you, Paul. That's John talked a lot about our strategic plan, the processes that are going into that. I have to, say congratulations to Trevor for being, surviving these 2 years. I can definitely sympathize with you. It's been quite the challenge. Ronil and Carol, you guys have the helms going forward, going into next year. So hopefully next year will be bright. But it's been interesting. I know my board has heard me say this a lot, and probably you guys have too. It's been a learning opportunity. I've heard a lot of folks say that, it's been really bad. The impact, and it has. The last couple of years have had some really bad things, but there's also been some bright things. What I really saw was an industry that came together. So, for years past, 4, 5, 10 years, technology has always been a part of the industry, but it's always, at times felt like the third wheel. And, in times of crisis, this technology has shined and allowed people to really keep doing what they're doing, existing, or even us to meet, on this platform, even though we're all getting the burnout now, right? I know we talked about that earlier, having the Zoom burnout or Teams, or, I think I have all those applications loaded on my laptop, so I could handle any of those. And I've learned to juggle those multiple screens at the same time. It just gets tricky answering the right question on the right person. But, back in, I've been thinking about this as, I'm coming to the end of my term as well next, end of January next year, that I was really lucky. It's my last year as PE that I did get to travel. Now I know, at the end of that, Paul and Trevor and I talked about coming there and doing some presentations, but luckily the pandemic hit and kind of put a nix to that. But I did get to see the impact that BICSI's having on a worldwide stage. So it was a good thing and a bad thing, right? So it's a good thing to see the impact, but now if COVID hits, now how do we continue that? So that's been a struggle. It's been a challenge. I know John and the staff have really stepped up. John got quite the challenge coming in as the new CEO as I stepped on as president. So he and I got to learn some things together dealing with that, and how we maintain the quality of training and education and communication, and you do some things that work and you do some things that don't work, and that's kind of how you learn. But you can't be afraid to try. So that's probably been the sticking point for me, is that our industry hasn't quit trying. Right, our members, while we may see some numbers fall, we have some very dedicated volunteers and members that always seem to step up, and that's what makes me really proud to be a BICSI member and be the president over these 2 years, just to watch that happen. So we took the time, all those things that John said. I mentioned, for those of you who may have heard in my the last normal conference we had, I talked about turning BICSI upside down and inside out and really setting it up to try to get ready to grow. The pandemic surprisingly provided us with that platform, whether we knew it or not, because we really had, like Trevor and Paul and Renil, so we all got a chance to focus on what we're doing, right? Get a chance to look internally, really strengthen those processes up, and then move forward with them. So I know, between John and Carol and myself and the board, we've really worked hard with that over the last, year and a half, 2 years, to really set BICSI up. We still got some work to do. As you guys all know, it takes some time. When you really take a deep dive like that, it takes time to come out of it. So definitely appreciate the patience that you guys have had with us, but look forward to working in the future with Ronil and this group and Rui and BICSI Japan. You guys have been great collaborators, full of great volunteers, and I know that we really appreciate that. And all I can say is just good luck. Keep up the good work. You guys are doing a solid work. We've watched all the numbers, and you stay consistent, and that's success. And in the times that we're going through, we've watched our two affiliates and you guys in BICSI Japan, and everything stayed consistent. And that's to us, that's a great success. When we've seen other associations struggle and with membership and participation, and we all like to get back together and can't wait. We pulled off our first hybrid conference last August in Vegas, which was an interesting experience all in its own, full of successes and challenges. Some things worked and some things didn't, and but it was a growth period. And I think the thing that we've learned is that going forward, we may not, every conference may be a hybrid conference because it's really opened up. We've seen a new member base have access to all the information, which I think is where we all want to be, right? To get all our information out to the masses. And how do we provide that to them easier and provide them the credentialing they need in the education and the chance to make the continuing education credits and those things. So I think we definitely have launched a new era for BICSI. And coming out of this, I think we're headed for brighter things in the future. And I look forward to the future leadership getting us there. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you guys again for having us. It's been an honor to participate in the last couple of years with you guys. And I may pop in every once in a while just to see what's happening.
Thanks very much, Todd. And you're always welcome to come down and see us down here. Certainly enjoy spending a bit of time with you if you ever get a chance.
Please.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to hand back to Trevor to lead us into the next phase, some questions.
Okay, thank you, Paul, and thank you very much, John and Todd, for your words. It's greatly appreciated by all of us down here in South Pacific, as has been your involvement with us over the last couple of years. Thank you, Ronil, and thank you, Aaron, as well, for your input. So we had the opportunity, well, we sent out to our members opportunity to raise any questions for today or things that were on their mind. So we got three actually questions in. So the first one is membership. So the question is, what are we doing to grow our membership and our BICSI community and its influence? It seems we are stagnant and not growing, possibly even declining in some ways. We need to renew our focus to becoming a 500-person region, which we have done before and achieved that position. Unfortunately, only lasted a few months, but we had been up around the high fours at the time. And when looking at membership return on investment, ROI. So to answer that, I guess Paul, you and I and Ronil could all have a little bit of this one to comment. I'll kick it off. Through the pandemic, we tried initiatives to keep membership value and retain membership. I guess in some ways, our membership, you could say stagnant, but I say consistent, as John and Todd mentioned. I've seen organisations flow backwards very heavily. However, that is not the member who raised this question or any other membership's concern. Their concern is value for membership for BICSI, which is totally understood and appreciated. So with some of the things that Ronil's doing and looking at with Paul and the board, I believe will push us, new initiatives will push us towards that 500-person region, and obviously equals a return on investment for our members. Would you like to add anything to that, Paul or Renil?
I've got a fair bit to add, but Renil, do you want to go first? And you might cover some of what I wanted to talk about.
Look, I think mine is very simple to answer about the growth. And I think the first thing we need to do, as Trevor said, is really engage with our members and show them the value of membership. And I think if you show them that, then we're having the retention strategy. And then there's two focuses. And I know in previous strategy meetings, we've looked at not only growth, but retention. So it's very important to focus on our members that are there and that they maintain their membership moving forward and continue to be members. And therefore, we're really stepping up in terms of engagement, really not just perceived value, but real value to people. And then on the back of that, using that success to be the driver for future growth. And the future growth will be around, I guess, having even our members that are seeing value, telling their colleagues, telling their organisations, getting corporate members to be more active by individuals driving it for us. It's very, very short-sighted if we just think that a very small collective can keep driving growth. I think we need the entire community, the 300, the 400, to see value, and therefore they will, even if they talk to one other person and demonstrate that value or are able to explain that value, then we're going to be successful. So that's probably the focus from my side.
If I can just add a few things to that, more on the tactical side of things. There are a lot of programs that we had in place or planned to introduce in place early last year. And unfortunately, COVID basically didn't put a stop to it, but it put a dampener on things. We're going to reinstigate these programs. I'll cite just a couple of them rather than going into all the details. One of which was, let's call it a matrix of compliant product. In Australia and New Zealand, we have quite stringent standards, regulations. BICSI is recognised for its expertise in the standards and its advocacy of standards. So what we've put together, I've had dialogue with a number of our corporate members who are suppliers, is to compile a list of products that are compliant and the documentation that goes along with it. And basically to create that line in the sand to the marketplace so that the wider community goes to BICSI and says, is this product acceptable or not? I've had call it the good fortune over the last 18 months of having to liaise with a lot of BRCA registered cablers. So these are not BICSI members, these are registered cablers. And the questions come up frequently about product being compliant or not. Now, here in Australia, it is illegal to use non-compliant product. The regulator has details about what's compliant and what's not. It doesn't articulate that information as broadly as we'd like to think it should. So part of the rationale is to create this matrix so that people can come to us. And it is simply a case of defining, let's call it the good guys versus the cowboys, because we know there are lots of cowboys in the marketplace. In New Zealand, it's not a regulated market, but a lot of the consultants and users are very conscious of Australian regulations and will adopt that in their specifications. So once again, we'll find that New Zealand members and the community at large will benefit from that. I'll pick up on a comment that Todd made earlier. We talked about a time to turn BICSI upside down and inside out and on its head. That was forced on us by COVID. We actually experienced that. And I put this concept to our board several months ago, that once we get back into normality, we want to, I'll put this as succinctly as possible without going into all the detail. The value that we have is our members and your expertise. And it's not value to ourselves, it's value to our consumers, to our clients, to the industry, to the marketplace, to the community, etc. And we want to sell BICSI skills, aka BICSI members, to the wider community. So BICSI is very well connected with a lot of the other associations, the applications, whether it's the security industry, the AV industry, the facility management industry, the intelligent building industry, intelligent transport systems. Yeah, there's a wide variety of areas. We want to be able to demonstrate to these marketplaces the skill set that is required to get it right. And many of you members have actually spoken to me about this, cited experiences that you've had of being able to demonstrate the skill set that we, our ICT infrastructure industry, have that other industries use. So whilst we don't tell the security industry how to create fields of view with their security, they can't tell us what's required for cabling. We can tell them and we can assist them to ensure that it's done right. This is part of the member ROI, and it's the ability to lift our profile to the wider communities. And coronavirus has forced people to do that because it's emphasized the simple fact that we are an essential service. So that's just a couple of examples of some of the programs that they're not new. They're programs that have been around for some time that have been unfortunately stifled by coronavirus, but they're still very much alive in our eyes. We want to continue running with those moving forward when we get back to normality.
Okay, thank you, Reneel and Paul. Obviously, I hope that response satisfied the member's question there. Number 2, accreditations or return on investment. It seems to me we are losing accreditations faster than gaining them. We believe that that's directed at credential holders. Accreditations are a core of our member benefits, which is totally correct. We all agree totally on that. And we need a lot more focus from the new board. Now, it's interesting that question came up because it made us all think about that. Yes, it does need more focus, and they are a core of our membership benefits. But I guess my eyes have been a little bit skewed because as a trainer, BICSI trainer, I've seen those who have achieved their credentials in the last few months, and it has been a few guys, and earlier in the year a couple more. But it's taken my eye off who's actually probably fallen away. So it did raise a very, very good point that instigated us or started us off that Paul is going to have a look at those numbers with Reneel and see actually who has dropped off. And being through COVID, I know we've lost a couple of members pertaining to the fact that, they've looked at, I guess we all did this. What's a nice to have? What's a must have? And I'll be honest, I culled a couple of industry memberships because it was a nice to have, not a must have. Where BICSI is a must have, in my opinion, for me. So there could be other factors behind that, but it is important for us as a organisation, for the leadership team to look at that and find out why we're losing credential holders, because it is a massive core of our business. And for a region or affiliate, we do have a high number of credential holders per, capita, I guess the word is. I think about 25% of our members, a little bit over, have a credential. And John was saying last week to us in our board meeting that there has been some growth in credential holders across the globe. So in America and outside of America. So that's something we certainly need to have a look at. So that was a very, very good question. And thank you very much for raising it. Do you want to add any comments, Reneel, Paul? Pretty happy with that?
Paul, if you don't mind, I'll just add to that to say, look, it definitely is a focus of the new board, and it has been of the last board or the current board as well. Member retention, as I spoke earlier, is one focus, but offer, I guess, a splinter, as Trevor said, we know that there's about 25% or just slightly higher credentials within the overall membership or credential holders. So focusing on the credential holders and seeing what's important to them, and again, looking at what they need out of their credentialing, how we can support them better, and then getting in programs in place to get them to continue holding on those credentials is going to be critical for us continuing on. And that's something we are making sure that we have CPDs, other forms of engagement with credential holders to maintain and retain their credentials, but also make sure that the community, and that's one thing that I know a past chair has always mentioned, once we become a peak body, therefore then we have some gravitas in the industry, therefore the credentials that our credential holders hold are seen as valuable outside our community. And that's when the credentials become really effective, because it's not only this BICSI community that sees it as an important credential to hold, it's the wider community that holds that. So it's a challenge that we've got to work through in the next few years as BICSI South Pacific.
No, I'll just add a few more words to that too. And I entirely agree with the member who raised this issue. The term that they use, return on investment, is very important. And it's an investment not only of money, but also time and effort to become a credential holder. It's there for a reason. It's the ability to have an indication in the marketplace that they are better than others, or quality. It's a badge of honor. Part of the program I mentioned earlier, basically selling membership to the wider community, this is core. This is a key area. So the ability for our RCDDs or DCDCs or NTSs, OSPs, etc., who have these credentials, it means that we need to go and explain to the different associations, the different user groups, the different bodies like healthcare, education, etc., demonstrate to them tangibly through documentation and through some experiential side of things, how a credential holder provides a better outcome for them. We've talked about this thing for many, many years. Michelle, this is one of the ideas I wanted to sort of throw at you now that you've just joined the organization. I think it's core to what we do, and the ROI is an important aspect. Members are investing a lot of time and effort into becoming credential holder. They expect a return on that, and we certainly want to work with them on that. And as Trevor mentioned, that's 25% of our membership. We want to see that grow, and as a result of these members becoming accredited, they will encourage others to become members as well. So it becomes a cycle, a positive cycle.
Okay, thank you, Reneel and Paul, for that. So I hope that our responses satisfied the members' question there and where our focus is. Number 3, support of BICSI South Pacific by BICSI headquarters. The question or the comment is, does it always seem equal? I know we need to submit all presentations a month before delivery for credit approval, but I enrolled on one of the US seminars with details pending only weeks before it ran. And when they first set up an international board member, they appointed an American who never really contacted us. I have grumbled for years that BICSI headquarters only recognise the first of the I's in their name. So on that, I may, if you don't mind, John or Todd, may do a classic AFL handball here and pass this one across to you guys. But I will say, in saying that, in all seriousness, I'm very pleased that the members have been frank and have raised these issues and these questions. It is very, very important for us to see this as a leadership team, and it's very, very important for BICSI headquarters to see this as well, because at the end of the day, and I'm not saying in any way the member is wrong, but any question or comment, right, wrong, or indifferent, is how that member feels, and that member pays his dues to our membership. So that's the critical part that we need to address. So, John, would you like to start on that one? Or?
Well, I saw Todd come off of mute, so I think I'll defer to him for first words, and then I can add some color if necessary.
Okay, I'll be happy to take that. So you're right, Trevor. I mean, we should never shy away from the hard questions because sometimes those are the ones who drive us the hardest, right, to get to the answer. Because most of the time they get right to the point. You know, and this talks about, you know, the communication. I think what it boils down to basically is communication. And so again, I'm going to go back to when I traveled. So when I got to travel to the different parts of the world and see how BICSI operates and got to meet with different members, and I made sure to sit and talk with a lot of them for several reasons. One, what they liked and what they didn't like. And two, you know, we were my second year's PE. We're in the search for a new CEO. Is finding, you know, what they wanted in a new CEO. So it became very, you know, pretty clear, pretty fast that They wanted the same level of attention across the board. And then sometimes it was a struggle. There's different challenges when you go to different parts of the world and trying to pull off events. In the last year and a half, now that we have more international participation and even our US events, it's difficult. It's created some challenges. So it's caused us to take a deeper look into the processes for, accrediting presentations for CECs, or, getting members their CECs from other presentations that may or may not have gone through BICSI, first. So it definitely has exposed a few things. Like I said, you find out things when you run through something like the pandemic. You find out what's successful and what's not, and what you have to work on. And going through all that, it definitely exposed some weaknesses that we had and need to work on. But the one thing that was kind of resounding that the folks wanted in leadership was somebody not afraid to tackle those and to recognize them and tackle them. So that's what John has done. He's challenged the staff to, not shy away from those. Use this time to hone those processes, and hopefully make these experiences better for the members. I know it's been difficult, and it's hard to have the absolute correct answer for everyone out there. All we can do is ask their patience as we get through it, and then we'll make it better. I don't know, John, if you want to add on to that.
That was about as good an answer as I could have ever come up with. That was very good, Todd. Thank you. And I think it's spot on. Just as a reminder, BICSI headquarters, we have, I think what's published is about 26,000 customers that are spread out across about 100 different countries around the world, and trying to provide the same level of service and support for every single one of them is a daunting task. And so we're doing the best we can with our resources. And I think that's what I like about the affiliate model, because the affiliate model gives at least BICSI South Pacific some autonomy to really address those needs specifically, as well as in Japan. While, as Todd said, we look at what has worked and what hasn't worked, and trying to find more creative and innovative ways to better meet the needs of our credential holders and members around the globe equitably. In other words, specific example, we haven't been able to do as many events around the globe as we've done in the past. And that was primarily because of COVID and the pandemic, shutting down travel and preventing people from getting together face to face. And so as we come out of the pandemic, how do we leverage, or how do we optimize our resources in order to support all of the activities going on around the world as equitably as we possibly can, giving everyone access to CEC opportunities, giving everyone access to education and other services that BICSI provides, and to do that equally around the world. It's very difficult to do. It's impossible to do it at a level that I'd like to see us do it. Doesn't mean we won't get there at some point in the future, but we're working towards that. But again, I think that's the advantage of BICSI South Pacific, because you do have a dedicated group, you have a dedicated board, you've got Paul, you've got others that are focused on your particular region. And it certainly helps to make sure that the members and the credential holders of the South Pacific region are getting a little bit more attention than all of those other regions that don't have an affiliate, which is another reason why, again, we're looking at expanding the affiliate program so that we could do a much better job of meeting the needs of our members and credential holders globally. And in terms of the comment about BICSI headquarters only recognizes the first of the I's in their name, I'm assuming they're talking about industry, which is Building Industry Consulting Service International. That used to be the vision of the organization, but the board, immediately after I started, the board had made the decision to change that focus. instead of being focused purely on the industry, they truly are now focused on the profession. And if you look at the vision of the organization, it specifically says they're focused on the profession, the individuals, the people who are struggling day to day to make a living. And that's where our focus has been. And that is where our focus is going to be going forward as we implement these programs, not only what you talked about, Paul, which I think is very impressive, and I can't wait to see more coming from that and what we could do to potentially support you, but the other initiatives that we're working on, looking at our marketing strategy and our growth strategy, how do we keep focused on the profession when we put that together? Looking at our membership programs, individual and corporate, how do we keep the professional and the profession in focus as we build out the roadmap for those programs? So while perception may be a temporary reality for whoever asked this question, I would hopefully, with everything that we've said, help them understand that we get it and we are working as hard as we can to try to provide and deliver the value that you expect in BICSI programs, whether that program is coming directly from headquarters or whether it's coming from BICSI South Pacific, wherever it comes from. We're at headquarters. We're going to be focused on doing the best that we can to make sure that there is equitable access to BICSI services and products globally. It's not going to happen overnight. But it will happen at some point. We're going to get better and better as we grow and as we expand, and certainly we'll be doing that together with BICSI South Pacific, with BICSI Japan, and any other future BICSI affiliates. One last comment I would like to make, though, going back to the first question on membership. The statement was we need to renew our focus to becoming a 500-person region. I would say that 500 number is too low. I think that probably needs to be closer to like 10,000 if we can get it that far. And I'm telling you, you've got BICSI headquarters commitment to helping you all do that as best we can.
Okay, thank you very much, John and Todd, for your input to that question. Truly appreciate it. I think the next slide, Paul, is any other questions from the floor. So this is your time to raise any questions, comments that you may have to the board and our US colleagues.
Just a quick one, if there's a lot of questions, there is the functionality for raising a hand on the control tab at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a question, might be easy just to raise a hand first.
And we'll direct them all to you, Paul. Murray Teal has raised his hand.
Thanks, Murray.
Just have to come off mute. I noticed a lot of way through the conversation, you're talking about membership value and being a peak body. And I'm, as just a normal member or a corporate member, what's interesting to me is the change in the markets and what you're doing to support change. And there are certain key elements now that, because of change, we've not got good guidance as to how to implement design. And given what BICSI is, I think the ability to implement design well is critical. I talk particularly around the heat rise issue for PoE on constantly rise cables, supported by the ISO IEC standard or specification 29125. There is calculators in the marketplace by different vendors, but there is no global calculator. And I mentioned through Paul, and I'm assuming it's made it to you, that would be a value statement that would be ideal for people who are implementing designs, given that 90-metre cable runs for permalinks may not be suitable if we've got all the cables powered. And the other one, which I've not mentioned, is probably the impact of one pair cabling that's going to hit us soon. So 802.3 CG is out and about. We've got the Poodle in support of that as well. But again, I would be looking with my membership from BICSI to take a front foot on those. So I'm just curious about how BICSI is addressing change in the long-established standards. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Murray. Paul, you want to?
Oh, look, I'd certainly want to concur with Murray, and certainly I'll start by thanking Murray for being my eyes and ears of industry. What Murray sees as in industry is generally many years in advance of what will actually happen. So this is very good guidance, and I do thank you for this initiative. You've recommended a number of things to us, and it's a case of not so much just Paul Stathis or BICSI South Pacific doing it, but it's about the industry doing it collectively. And look, I certainly would encourage, we have talked about the POE calculator with BICSI Inc. or BICSI HQ. Certainly we want to emphasize that encouragement for them to put something together, because the market needs this sort of information. We need to be the go-to group that industry, professionals, that everyone goes to, and we become the keepers of the knowledge.
Just to add to yours, Paul, Murray, I can definitely say that the board has discussed that at length. That statement did make its way through, and I think John and the team were on a conversation where we did say it. What we do want to be able to do, and I know it's a vision for BICSI South Pacific, similar to how BRCA members go in and ask, basically have Paul on speed dial. We want that same approach from all of our members. So they go to our website, and any calculators or tools are through that. And one of the examples is BICSI are doing a really good job with Infocom and the AV industry to direct people through there, then channel it out onto vendors if they need. But also we become the trusted form of information, and not with a vendor bias lens on. And I know there are a lot of vendors as part of BICSI, but that can contribute towards being the point of contact. So the landing page should be the BICSI South Pacific page, or we move on to the BICSI global page if it's a global calculator. And those tools, we should be really championing the development of those tools. And I think getting yourself on board to make sure that they're correct and they've got the right standards-based approach to it is something we want to do. Because once again, that shows value even to our brothers in the electrical engineering community, who tend to step sometimes willingly or unwillingly into our communications domain and telecommunications domain. At least they're doing it in the right way. What we don't want to do is hide off our industry. What we want to do is be the educators to expand our industry. And I think Paul and I have discussed this a lot. We do get frustrated by electrical engineers trying to do telecommunications design and do it badly. But instead of trying to say, stop doing it, and I sit with hundreds of them, we should be educating them to do it the right way. And that grows and grows the actual group of people that can do it right. So I think it's definitely something we want to champion and support, and we will definitely get your help and others. And I know Aaron's definitely a champion in standards and trying to get things done right, because he sees a lot of it done wrong, even by some of our members. So I think having the tools for members will be very important for all of us.
All right. Thank you, Ranil. Thank you, Murray, for your question. David Harris, you had your hand up, but it's disappeared.
No, I was just putting a thumbs up to that comment and the suggestion. And I'll certainly speak to our company about whether we can at least share the links for our calculators, which we've have been educating the industry in, for power over Ethernet, power loss, etc., cable tray diameters. At least if we can share those links onto the website, I'll make some inquiries for us.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? Going?
Hey, Trevor, on the calculator issue, I feel like I need to just throw some cautionary comments out there, simply because, as an American, I have to admit that the U.S. is a very litigious society. And when you start publishing tools like that, it opens up liability to BICSI and probably some of the companies that may use those. Having, from experience, providing tools like that, you have to be very careful about how you position them, and certainly the language and the messaging that you put out around them, just so that you're protecting not only BICSI, the organization, but certainly the companies that may use those in bids, in projects, or what have you, to avoid any potential liability resulting out of the use of tools such as that. So while I'm certainly not against it, there are probably ways that we can work through that, but we have to be very careful about it, particularly here in the US. And because we serve a global market, how do you create a calculator that can be used in every global market that we serve? So that's a bit of a challenge as well.
No, you raise a good point there, John. Thank you very much for that. I see Paul is rigorously taking notes there. So no doubt.
Is it that obvious?
Yeah. No, you do love it, mate. Yeah, so that's something that we'll take on board, and no doubt Paul may be in contact with you over that. Thank you. Aaron, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi guys. I just wanted to add to what John was saying as well. Also, we don't want to be proponents of lazy engineering either. That's one of the sort of bugbears at the moment, is that there's this idea that it can be done with a calculator, and that engineering is not seems to be this thing that we don't engage in. We don't just stick electrical calculators on websites and stuff like that and call that electrical engineering. So I just want to be mindful of the fact that we, as telecoms professionals doing telecoms engineering as well, that that we don't rely so heavily on calculators and those sorts of generic tools.
Yeah, very valid point, Aaron.
Can I just seek a point of clarification on that? If I go out and get myself an RCDD and I am looking at doing design, is there material within the BICSI information that will address heat rise and discount length as a precursor to the design? So given that it would become a design requirement, how does BICSI internationally address it currently and going forward?
Murray, that would be through the actual adherence to the standards. I mean, BICSI not only does BICSI in its training material have best practice design requirements, but it also stipulates things like a conformance to standards. So at the end of the day, if you're doing a project that's meant to be conformant to 14763-2 and you're using a best practice methodology, well, then ideally you would still try to be fully conformant to the standard.
But can I make a comment to Murray? Because it really comes into play that BICSI has that 007 standard for intelligent building. And you're right, Murray, it's hard, very hard to keep up with technology. As soon as you print a standard, it's out of date already because technology changes so quickly. But there are portions in that standard that we do address voltage drop, we do address a hybrid fiber copper cable to go further distances past the 90 meters. So there are standards out there that currently address it, but you're right, trying to keep up with technology is one huge roadblock after another. But I feel your pain. I was the chair of the Intelligent Building Standards, so that is one of my passions, is looking at all of the different applications coming onto the network. And I've gone around giving presentations. I was just talking to the electrical contractors, the Independent Electrical Contractors Conference. So it is something that I know we're all concerned with. I agree with John. You put something like that up, you don't want to become an electrical engineer if you're not one. So there are manufacturers who do have some of these calculators and tools on their site. So I'd rather let them be liable rather than have BICSI be wrong, liable. And I hope that answers the questions.
Specific to heat rise, I don't think our standards specifically address heat rise that I'm aware of, but I've made a note to ask that question.
So the manufacturers do. The manufacturers do. Yeah.
Yeah. So the standards of interest would be ISO IEC TS 29125, which a lot of the information came out of Americans participating in the ISO IEC. And the other one that was mentioned in the international standards is ISO IEC 14763-2, which both have got those some heat rise in there. The problem I've got personally is I've spoken to 3 engineers that are specialists in the field, and both have come up with different numbers. And even applying the calculators provided by different manufacturers, applying to the rules, some don't seem to align and with each other. So it's just an issue. And again, if you're a peak body, even if it's just a statement saying this is the best practice, go off and engage with the person, that will be at least some information about how to address it. So if you're not going to do a calculator, at least tell them how to address the problem, choose a product, and then go off and
right. And every cable manufacturer, you know, I mean, even though they manufacture their cable to certain standards, they're all different, and so you really have to go to the separate individual manufacturer.
So I really like the statement about not creating lazy engineers or lazy designers.
Yeah, I was just about to cut back in.
That's where this comes into play. Doing that, I even have a few of those in my own firm that I work with. Is you're right. You can have the PEO world has a calculator on there, but even it only addresses it's very generic set of standards that you have to use when you use that calculator. What it doesn't take into account is the application or the environment that you're putting it in.
Exactly.
So while all the cables, I'm part of the IEEE C8 group, and we get to see a lot of those cable specifications, and so it has some good calculations in there. IEEE does a good job of going after that as well, as best as it can. But it's different. For the cable will react differently depending on the environment that it's in. So it does create the designer to actually be a designer. So I think Murray's correct. I mean, there's not the silver lining out there for that POE calculator. We wish there was, but they're getting closer. So the manufacturers have it. If you're using their cable, like Carol said, the manufacturers address heat rise, but it's hard for associations to accurately do that and stay generic. So the manufacturers can do it. Some of the other, standard bodies can put some parameters around it. And, I would look to, I might even, you might even send a challenge into the TIM group for BICSI and to see how they address it, because you talked about getting the RCDD. So that's where that question really would come out of. Is it in the TDM manuals? And how does it address it in there? So that's probably where I would take that question back to our current, committee chair and ask them how they're addressing that. Take it back to that committee.
I've got to double check, but I did the DD 102 course, the latest version in August, and I'm sure there was a reference to 007 on heat rise, but I'm going to double check that, and I might take that question to the guys, Murray, if that's all right. Or...
That's a good question, Murray. You sparked some good conversation.
Oh yeah, certainly does.
Sounds like the next standard volunteer there, Trevor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're going to reopen 007 in another year. I'm writing down Murray's name and give it to our standards chair.
Okay.
You have a number of BICSI members in the US that actively participated on the creation of TS 29125. So there is an area of expertise that has been involved in that work. Some have just recently retired, but you have got a plethora of expertise in that. And we've got a published test method end. There's a published test method end. There's the calculators that deal with all the things that you raised about, what's it's installed in, what's the ambient temperature, what's the bundle size, what's the heat load, all through it. So there is that you do have in your membership in the US a lot of expertise.
Okay. Well, we're right on the 12:30 mark now. If there's any last questions, please feel free to raise the question, or as Paul said, you could submit your questions afterwards, and we'll certainly get back to you. But if there's no more questions from the floor, I'll proceed to close off our AGM. Okay, so once again, thank you all for attending. Thank you all for our support. and those who have various time zones around the world. Thank you very much. Special thanks to our members. And once again, on my parting of the board, I once again thank Paul immensely, and also the board for your support and everyone else's support across the globe, and our membership support from our members. Also, I want to point out Carl Eccles, who's on the call here. Thank you, mate, for your hard work, continued hard work. You're kind of behind the scenes there. We see your name on emails, but you know, you're behind the scenes there in the engine room with Paul. So rest assured that your efforts certainly do not get overlooked by any means. So I thank you very much for that. And once again, thank you, Paul. So on that note, it is 12:31. I'll formally close off the AGM. And Renil, my friend, you have the chair.
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you for an amazing 2 years. It's probably been the most challenging 2 years that all of us have seen. And I think, too, as Aaron showed, to be in the black, to have positive member participation still, and of the effort of the retention of members, I think is a good step where you've left it. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you to everybody that supported me. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you, everyone. We are recording this at the moment, so I'm just going to close the recording as officially finished, and we'll make that available on our website for anyone wanting to access it. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and preparation.
So
Thanks again, Paul and Trevor.